So I am a child of the 90s, a time that you may remember as being marked by moments of sheer terror and hopelessness, and yet the sense of optimistic possibility. On the one hand, we had grunge music in our ears, reminding us that life was short and the system was stacked against us, and we were all gonna die, so what was the point anyway? But yet at the same time, we had hip-hop artists reminding us that even though life was short and the system was stacked against us, we were in the position to make the kind of change that we wanted to see in the world. We had Y2K, which at the turn of the century meant that there was a good chance our phones and computers were gonna go dark, elevators were gonna come crashing out of the sky, and nuclear codes might accidentally launch a couple missiles. Sorry about that. But hey, good news, we had an obligation to party like it was 1999, and so we needed to find a solution. In the 90s, we were the birthplace of corporate scandal. Erin Brockovich was our poster child. We had class action lawsuits against big tobacco. We had the Enron scandal. At any moment reminding us that corporate America was really only out to make a buck off of our backs, and we'd be lucky to survive. And yet, somehow we were all going to live in incredible New York City apartments, making a great living wage, living with our best friends, and the cute guys from across the hall were going to be over all the time, just like it was on Friends. It was going to be incredible. We had choices. We could choose to live with hopelessness or choose optimism. Well, I chose optimism. And like a lot of good kids in the 90s who chose optimism and wanted to make the world a better place, but had no real plan for how I was going to do that, I went ahead and put off making a decision by declaring English as a major. But the good news was that in '99, even an English major could get a pretty good job coming out of college. And I remember sitting in my college apartment looking through the job boards that were being recruited at my university. The book was almost an inch thick. It had a pink cover and a black binding, and I can still smell the ink on the page. And as I looked through opportunity after opportunity, my optimism began to turn into hopelessness. Because while I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, I knew that I did not want to do anything that was in that book. I sat there and I looked, and just as I almost closed the cover, the one job description jumped out at me. It said, the thing most team leaders talk about is the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do that. And I could not wait for that interview. I marched into that interview with my shoulder-padded suit and my chunky heels and my Rachel Bob, and I worked really hard to get that job. And I got that job. And at the ripe old age of 21, I marched into the real world ready to make my mark by working at a trucking company. Now, if you had known me back in the 90s, you would have been surprised that this was my choice of career, because it wasn't really the glamorous industry that I'd been, dreaming about for the last decade. But the reality is that it was glorious. I had amazing relationships with the people I worked with in the office and on the road. I felt that my work was meaningful. I made sure that my drivers had a living wage. I got them home when they wanted to be home. Most importantly to me, I made sure that they had the tools and the resources and the support that they needed to operate safely. I felt like I got to have a positive impact on the environment, and I felt like the more I did well in this company, the more I was going to be able to help it grow and create greater impact for society. I was living the dream. I had it made. I had figured out how to hack the system. I had done it. I had figured out how I was going to make a decent wage, and I was going to make the world a better place. My soul was on fire. I loved that job. Until that one particular performance appraisal, a document which, for the record, I still have. It is covered in red ink and snot and tears and like every note of indignation I could come up with. Because while I was busy making things better for my drivers, apparently, according to my manager, I wasn't making the company enough money. And, it wasn't really my fault. I was just too soft-hearted, and I didn't understand how finance worked. But if I couldn't figure it out, I wasn't going to be able to keep my job. I went home that day, and I cried my eyes out. I sat on my big, yellow, fuzzy couch, the first purchase I had made with my adult big girl paycheck. And I felt so stupid because I didn't understand why business financials worked they did, the way they worked the way they did. And I felt so naive for thinking that I would have figured it out in the first place. And I felt so hopeless because if I couldn't do it there, where was I going to do it? How was I going to leave a mark on the world if I couldn't do it there? Fortunately, that manager was in the minority of the people who worked at that company. And after 3 or 4 days of moping around the office in my ugliest flannel shirt, one of the other managers realized that I wasn't quite myself. And he pulled me into a room, picked me up, dusted me off, and reminded me why I loved that company and why I wanted to work there and why I wanted to make a difference in the first place. And I left that conversation thinking, well, if the reason that I can't do this is simply because I don't have the financial chops, well, that's an easy solution. And the next weekend, I went ahead and spent my time applying for business school. So here we are, 22 years, 3 major career changes, 2 businesses of my own, and 10,000 hours of obsessive research. And there is one thing that I know for sure. I know that it is possible for us to use business to make the world a better place. About a decade ago, one of my realizations was that if I was going to prove that it is possible for businesses to create purpose and social impact, that I was going to need some data. And so I started paying attention to what companies were doing that demonstrated an active desire to create healthy, effective, meaningful communities, or if they were just avoiding the sense of responsibility that comes with leadership. And I was able to quantify and ultimately score these companies. And then once I had the data, the next question became, well, what do we know about what that means for financials? What's the integration? Do businesses that create positive social impact, do they actually outperform the market? And the answer is yes. In fact, when you create a portfolio using just companies that create positive social impact, what I call the aspirational business model, they actually outperform the market by almost 30% as a portfolio. It's amazing. It is possible for businesses to create positive impact and profit. And then the numbers, it's not just that it's possible, it's powerful. Businesses that are in the top 25% of social impact, they actually outperform those in the bottom by almost 80% more net income. They make 80% more money than the people that do not. And they use it more effectively too, because they have 40% more return on equity. The financials are there. We do not have a false dichotomy between having businesses that make the world a better place and profit. But the best part is that these businesses, they're not using some fancy MBA strategy. They don't have a secret sauce that the rest of us are not privy to. And in fact, if we want to do this with our organizations, you can use these 5 cultures, competencies, and behaviors. It doesn't matter if you have 50,000 employees or 50 employees. The things that these organizations do are they hold themselves to a sense of purpose. They have accountability for the outcomes they want to see in the world. They create connection with their employees. They operate with integrity, and they communicate transparently. These are behaviors that just so happen to also make us happier people. And they work for our businesses too. So let me tell you what it looks like when we see organizations doing this. The first thing that we see is a sense of servanthood, purpose. Yes, you are trying to make money. You are also trying to offer a high-quality product at a reasonable price. But what else are you trying to do, and why are you doing it? What are the values that you want people to demonstrate? What's the vision for where you want to go? Organizations that create positive social impact, they know the answers to these questions, and so do the people within their teams. They also hold themselves accountable, and they hold themselves accountable to their own behavior, firstly, but then also to asking, is the behavior that we're demonstrating actually driving the kind of impact that we want to see? If we're a pharma company and we want to see health outcomes, are we actually paying attention to the work that we do and whether it creates the kind of health outcomes we want to see? They create a sense of connection with their employees. This is about creating living wages, safe working conditions, meaningful work opportunities, which can be as simple as a sense of purpose within your organization, or thinking about the way your employees are giving ideas to you and how we bring those to life so that people feel connected to the work that they're doing. Diversity also plays in here. Do you have diversity of thought from the boardroom all the way down to the training room? Is everybody in your organization bringing new ideas and perspectives to life so that you can really think about the solutions you want to offer and whether or not you are doing it in the way that is best suited for your organization? They hold themselves to the highest ethical conduct, and not just thinking about the regulatory requirements that the government requires them to do, but understanding where are the unintended consequences in the organization? Where are there harms that are happening within the entity that are hidden under the rocks that are maybe being incentivized? And how do you eliminate those, and how do you address them within your organization? And the last thing that these organizations do is they communicate transparently. Not just to say, hey, we've got an issue that we're trying to address and we need your help and ideas, but also to listen to the communities that they're operating within to understand what are the solutions that people need and how do they innovate to bring those solutions to life. They create a sense of purpose, they hold themselves accountable, they connect with their employees, they operate with high ethical conduct, and they communicate transparently. It's not magic. This is what businesses are made to do. If I could go back and talk to that poor kid crying on the couch, or anybody else who's ever wondered how we actually steward our businesses, how we leverage those resources to make the world a better place, there are a few things I would tell her. First off, I would tell her that it is possible. She's not crazy. We can use business to make the world a better place. I would tell her that she's closer than she even knows, because the power in this work is in thinking about the people within our ecosystems and treating them with integrity and respect and caring. That's where the power comes in. I would encourage her that regardless of what position she's in, she is in a position of power to address these changes, not just from a managerial or leadership position, but from understanding what businesses is she going to advocate to bring into her community or to keep out. By thinking about where she spends her money and where she invests her hard-earned savings. By paying attention to the behaviors of the organizations that she supports. And by demanding good working conditions, not just for the people in her business, but for the people around the world who are producing the goods and services that she is consuming, because we have access to that information. The last thing that I would tell her is that there's a lot of work to be done. Can you imagine if we were able to bring all of the resources of our corporate parties together to solving some of today's biggest challenges? It would be a game changer. What impossible thing would we do first? We could do it all. Sometimes that kid from the 90s still waffles a little bit between those feelings of hopelessness and that sense of optimism. And on those dark, sad days, I think we have to do it. The world cannot wait for us to figure out how we use corporate resources to make the world better. And on those optimistic days, days like today, I think I cannot wait for us to figure out how we can steward our corporate resources to make the world a better place. Because it is possible, it is powerful, and there are practical things that we can do every day.